To our class this evening about releasing imposter syndrome. This is one of the most common blocks that I see for high achievers, especially high achieving women, because we have so many expectations put on us. And a lot of those expectations are around, they don't have anything to do with career. So we've got to break through a lot of societal, cultural, and familial barriers that we were born into, in addition to things that we have just learned along the way with the bumps in the road. So as you join into the training, please say hello and let us know where you're tuning in from. I love to be able to say hi to all of you as I, see you checking in. I'm Sarah Nolan, and I help my clients and my students to release whatever restrictions they are facing so that they can, move through those barriers with ease and with speed and make the impact that they came here to make, really fulfill this mission that they're driven by. And they're not willing to let anything stand in the way. So when things like imposter syndrome and perfectionism and people pleasing and the money blocks come up, I help them to immediately release them. And sometimes this happens in a matter of an hour, and sometimes, it takes a little bit longer, but it happens really fast because we get to the root cause of these challenges. And so this evening, I'm helping you all with releasing imposter syndrome. Hello, Brittany. So happy to see you here. Yes, Brittany's in Louisiana. Beautiful. I would love to visit there sometime. I've actually been looking at real estate investments and looking at Louisiana as a potential area. All right. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about my story, and then I'm going to take you all through a very powerful exercise that brings up the right awareness that's needed in order to release this pattern of imposter syndrome. So I used to identify as somebody who was very shy and reserved. Like, people used to tell me all the time when I was a kid how shy I was. It's like, oh, she's just shy. Oh, you're being shy. And you've got to be really careful when you say things like that to kids, because they can really take on those identities because the adults are telling them and they assume it's the truth. The reality was I wasn't shy. I was just observing. I was just taking everything in and processing it all. And that's just like kind of how I am. It's part of my genius. It's actually a gift that I use today to be able to observe and really help people break through because of those observations. But as a child, the adults in my life, thought I was shy. And so I had this identity of being shy and reserved. And even though I was super ambitious in everything that I did, I identified more with defeat than success. So I was a super high achiever my whole life. I've always been that way. I was the kind of person who would like run to the top of the mountain. But then I wouldn't necessarily get to the very top. Like, I had this counteracting identity of defeat. And that identity I picked up just from things that I had learned from my parents and from school, and just different scenarios early on in my life shaped those beliefs for me. And when I started my business, I realized something was holding me back because I was doing all of the right things. I was taking massive action. I was like brave. All the things that other people wouldn't do, I would do those things, but I wasn't seeing the success. And when I realized this idea, when I learned about this idea of imposter syndrome, and I realized that I had this little voice inside of me that was saying, well, who am I to do that? And it would cause me to play small, and it would cause me to hold back. I would hold back my gifts. It's almost like I was so incredibly gifted and I was so talented, and I had so much potential that it was too much. Like I didn't identify with that success that I had right inside of me. And so I would hold it back. And I would hold it back because of my identity, which I talked about a little bit. And then the other reason that I was holding back was because, people in my family didn't do things like that. Like people in my family were reserved and they were very humble and, very cautious. And so every time I put myself out there, I was butting against this unwritten story that my family was telling me about the way that we're supposed to do things. Like people in our family do things a certain way. So let me know in the comments if you can relate to that. If you have had that experience in your family, in your society, in your culture, if people like you were taught to do things a certain way. And oftentimes when we're taught, to be a certain way, it's usually not the most empowering. Like people like us don't speak up. People like us stay back and watch, you know. So I'm going to take you through an exercise, and this is something that I came up with when I had this realization about myself. I was like, oh my gosh, I'm sabotaging myself over and over and over again, and I'm wasting so much energy and resources. And I've got to stop this. And because I have the tools that I do, I was able to bring myself through an exercise to release it. And then that voice went away because I got to the root of it. So I'm going to take you through this exercise that I take my clients through, and I use it, anywhere that I can. And it's called People Like Me Do Things Like This. So the first question, and I put in the description of the video of the training to take out your notebook. So take out your notebook, and I want you to answer this question. What experiences do you have imposter syndrome around? Okay, so do you have imposter syndrome, which is that voice that says, who am I to do this? Or who am I to be this? Do you have that with success in your business, with money, with visibility, with your body? It might be a little bit of all of those. So whatever comes to your mind, just write it down. And when you allow yourself to write down, whatever comes to your mind, it's going to show trust in your intuition. It's going to show trust with your inner self. So don't question anything that comes up. This is a time to just brain dump, on all these questions that I ask. All right. So what are you experiencing the imposter syndrome around, where that little voice says, who am I to do or to be that or to have that? Okay. The next question is, what were you taught about success in the first 6 years of your life? So think back to conversations that your parents had, or grandparents, or aunts and uncles, cousins, teachers. Think about people that you saw who were successful in your life. Like think about, kids in your class, like in first grade, if you can think back that far, kindergarten, first grade, maybe second grade. How did you feel about the kids who were the most successful in your groups? And how did your parents talk about people who were really successful? People who did really big things. My parents, they didn't really have specific conversations about it, but there was this, kids pick up on energy so easily, especially when it's our family, because there's so much subtle, we're around them so much, there's so much subtle communication. I always picked up this feeling, this energy from my family that people like us don't do big things. Like we just sit back on the sidelines and we watch everybody else do the big things. And they also, my parents talked about money. Like I do remember specific conversations they didn't necessarily talk about money in this way, but they would talk about the very wealthy people in my family with a negative tone. Like that person is rich and they're also a bad person. So what I extrapolated from that was rich people are bad. And so that was the belief system that I carried with me throughout my life. And I, really strived to be a good person. And so I avoided having a lot of money. Do you see how that works? Um, Hello, Sharon. Hello, Mary Lou. Thank you for tuning in. All right. So write this down in your notebook. What were you taught about success? In You could say like, what did you learn about success? As I said with my story, sometimes they're not actual conversations. Sometimes it's the subtle communication. It's the it's the facial expressions, it's the body language. Kids really pick up on that stuff. So go back into your memory bank and think about how your family communicated their feelings about success and how did you interpret those things. Um, what were you taught, or I should say, what did you learn about successful people? Did successful people seem like something that you could do as well? Like, for example, when you saw somebody who was more successful than you, did you tend to say, oh, I wish I could do that? Or did you tend to say, well, I can do that too? Which side did you lean towards more? And look at your family too, because as children, we want to emulate our family all throughout our entire life. We always want to please our parents until we realize at some point we become aware of that and we're like, oh, I don't need to please my parents anymore. Um, but think about your parents. How did your parents treat successful people, and what did you learn from those interactions? And feel free to share any of these in the comments as well. I'd be really interested to know what comes up for you and what some of your answers are. All right, so the next question is, what were the unspoken rules about success for your family? What were the unspoken rules? Like, what was that threshold where our family, achieves success up until this point? Like, our family pays all the bills. Our family, pays off our debts in time. Our family, files for bankruptcy when we get in trouble. Our family is always ahead of our bills. What were those unspoken rules that you learned growing up about success? Those were just some examples. I'm sure you're going to have your own individual rules. And let me know if this is making sense. For some of you, this might be, spot on, you're following me exactly. For some of you, this might be a newer concept. So I can totally go into more detail if you'd like. Sharon says, I was taught that bragging was not good. Oh my gosh, that is a great example, Sharon. Frugality was big. Yeah. When I was in school, I was in sixth grade. I will never forget this. We were talking about being humble, and my teacher was telling us what it meant to be humble. And I raised my hand and I said, well, I'm really humble. And my teacher was like, well, you're not humble. If you're going to admit it, that means you're not humble. Basically, she was saying I was bragging. And I just remember being crushed. Like, wow, like something's wrong with me because I expressed the fact that I was humble. And I remember really taking that in and really taking that to heart. And it's like, wow, I guess I shouldn't brag anymore. And so that really, it made me think of that, Sharon, I think that's so common, and we have to reprogram ourselves when we decide to go for something big, because most people, we're conditioned not to go for big things because, we can go into the philosophy of why that is. But if you look at, politics and religion and things like that, it's not going to really serve those systems if everybody's empowered and everybody rises up and does all these big things. It's very threatening. So, of course, living in these societies, we're going to grow up feeling like we're not allowed to do big things. Okay. Now, the next, so we've gone really deep into all of these, you could say, faults in our identity, faults in our rules about ourselves. Okay, so now we're going to swing it to the other side and think about, what do we want? What do I want? If the old paradigm was people like me play small, people like me stay quiet, people like me play on the sidelines, cross all that out. Okay? What do you want? What do you know is true about people like you? What do you know is really inside of you that you know that if you didn't have any limitations, you would do that thing or you would be that person? And write that down. People like me go for it and go for it big. People like me achieve success easily. People like me have as much money as we want. People like me love having tons of money. People like me are great with money. People like me, and fill in the blank. Let me know. I really want to hear, what is that thing that you know you have inside of you that you've been holding back on? And type it in the comments. People like me, blank. People like me do these things. People like me are this way. Okay, people like me are super healthy. People like me are super fit. People like me are athletic. So let me know. I want to hear. And I want to hold that space for you, and I want to see you in that light as well. All right. So you're going to create a new paradigm for yourself, your children, and generations forward. Like, by you taking on these new paradigms, you are going to pass that along to the next generations. Whatever old limiting paradigms you have carried with you to this point, they stop now, and you create something. You create a new future for yourself, your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, and beyond. I mean, this is really powerful stuff. These old paradigms that you're tossing out, these have been passed down through generations. I mean, who knows? They could have been passed down through 10 generations or more, because nobody, we just follow suit. And this is where it stops. So this is a really powerful moment. So really take a look at what you want to create for your family, for your legacy going forward. Now, this is the conscious part of the activity. We've tapped a little bit into the subconscious with these questions. The next step goes even deeper, and we go deep into the subconscious and even into your cells and your DNA to create that release. And this is something that I teach in my program Recharge, which is it's a 12-week self-study program. And you learn all of the tools and the processes to release all of these restrictions that are holding us back from, creating that impact and having the lives we really want. So this is something that I teach in that program. So if you want to, really get the full benefit of the exercise, that's definitely a path that you can take, and you can let me know if you'd like to do that. But you're going to get a lot of benefit from doing what we just did, and you're going to start to see your perception change. You're going to start to see yourself seeing things a little bit differently, which is going to inspire you to do things differently. It's going to inspire you to show up in a different way. You're going to be able to catch behaviors before they really play out. All right, so let me know if you would like to go even deeper into this exercise and look at all of the paradigms that are holding you back. Look at all of the ways that, you have been limiting yourself or playing smaller than your full potential. And I can, give you some tips, and I can show you how to get started with recharge and really unwind and unwrap all of these patterns and release them. So let's see. Sharon says, scarcity also, so have to compete with others in order to be successful. Yeah, that is a powerful one to release, Sharon. So let me know in the comments, what are the new paradigms that you're really excited to create for yourself and your children and those future generations? And I'm super excited for all of you. Let me know one of your biggest takeaways from this exercise. I'm just, let me tell you, things are going to be different. You're going to see yourself differently. You're going to see the way that you do things differently from this awareness. This is something, this exercise, keep your notes, because this exercise is something that you can come back to like every month. Come back to this, and you're going to see your progress, and you're going to see, okay, what's next? What's the next paradigm that we're going to work through? And you're going to release that, and you're going to say, okay, what's the next one? And it's like really refining this beautiful piece of artwork that you are every time you come back to this exercise and you go through that process to release and allow for space and bring forward those empowering paradigms. You know they're there, but you just can't access them until you release the false identities that are covering them up. All right. So let me know what your biggest takeaways were. And I can't wait to see some of these paradigms that you are cultivating for yourself. Sharon says, changing perspective is so important to be able to move forward. Absolutely, because everything is about, our perspective is everything. I was just talking with my son, River. He's 8 years old, at the dinner table, and he has like a knot in his neck, so he's got some pain in his body. And we always talk about gratitude at the dinner table. And I asked him what he was grateful for, and he couldn't tell me anything. And I was like, well, you can be grateful when you have pain. You can still be grateful, and you can either focus on everything that's going wrong, or you can focus on the things that are going right, and that will help you to, expand on those, and you'll really see that you have a great life. It's such a great example of how, the way that we feel and the way that we are in our lives is a direct reflection of our perception, because there's that whole spectrum of, light and dark. And when we focus on the dark areas, then we forget about that light. And it's good to have awareness of the whole big picture, but we can choose any part of that spectrum to focus on. Gigi, yes, there is this will stay up in the group. So this will stay up in the group, so come back and watch it. I also have a group called Women Wealth Builders. If you would like to be surrounded by other women who are empowered and ambitious and building wealth in all areas of life and working on the inner game of wealth and the outer game of wealth, then I would invite you to join that group. I'm actually just going to put it in there. The reason I thought of that, Gigi, was because I'm going to post this video in that group as well, because this is going to be super helpful for the Women Wealth Builders group. So I'm just typing that in the comments right now. Let's see, Women Wealth Builders. Oh, you know what? It's not coming. I'm not able to do it that way in the comments here. I'll have to put it in the description of the video. So awesome. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining me this evening. This was super fun. And I can't wait to do it next time. I'm going to do another training next week, so stay tuned. We're really working on Limiting beliefs. That's something that people have been really interested in, especially around money blocks. So I'm going to stay on that theme, and we're going to do another training on another type of money block next week. All right, have a great night.